What we proceeded to do then is use DProfiler to perform some further analysis on the models that were generated from Onuma from SEPS. The point of this one is just to show you that this was the final scheme that was illustrated by the Leo A. Daly team, and it's been imported into DProfiler through an exchange BIMXML that we determined earlier in the project and in the presentation. From a cost analysis perspective, which is what I want to highlight first, and I know you can't read this up on the screen, guys, it's washed out, but basically each one of these cost items is tied back to the building, and you can see that as the building is highlighted in the model. So there's a parametric connection there, and the coloring scheme, everything is used to align the data so everyone's looking at the same information. So a yellow building is a vacated building, a red is a demolition, the orange is new, so forth and so on. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there's a connection as well to the interior spaces that were created from SEPS, and then likewise how that got tied back to the database in DProfiler. So you see two columns in DProfiler. One is the room designation column, and one is the department column. These are important because from a parametric standpoint, the system uses the room designation as the key in the formula that determines what cost gets applied to this building. Whether I'm using the VA space type cost or whether I'm using a more detailed cost database. So that doesn't matter, but that is the connection between the two. So one of the other aspects we looked at was phasing, and if you go back to the Leo A. Daly deliverable, you'll see further down in the document they've started to lay out a high-level phasing program. And this document right here begins to illustrate what has to happen from a phasing plan. One thing that they note in this document is that, and it's almost word for word, it says there needs to be more discussion about this because basically this hasn't been quite figured out yet. But here's the basic concept. So I built the same information in DProfiler so that we could start to look at what their phasing plan lays out and how that might look from a constructability standpoint or just from a logistical standpoint. You've got people that are moving out of spaces and into new construction. You've got people vacating buildings. What does that look like from a high-level macro phasing standpoint? Again, I want to tie this back to the spreadsheet. So if I didn't have any of the phasing information, I could give this to the team. And this is a document that anyone on the team could have filled out. It basically highlights what the stages or phases are that we're looking at. They assign a color to it, and they assign either a duration, overall duration, or a start and end date. And that information gets imported into DProfiler and becomes the basis for the individual tasks that are defined. And then my job was simply to tie the graphic components, the model components, to the tasks. And so I'm going to play, this is an animated, you've probably heard of 4D sequencing or 4D scheduling. I'm going to play this as an animation and just talk through what's going to happen, but pay attention to what's happening in the spatial view because that's really where this information is being communicated. Of course, anyone could look at this as a Gantt chart and try to read that, but just to put that information out there more graphically is the goal and create a higher level comprehension. So I'm going to start playing this. The first thing that you see is up in the upper right-hand corner is we're calling out what activities are occurring and the cost associated with it. So after we've gone through and put cost on each one of these buildings or activities, we can start to see what the cost-loaded effect of that is over time. And so if this is a 10-year master plan or a 15-year study, then we can see what those costs are and how they build up during certain time frames. What's happening initially is the community centers being built. So this building down here is highlighted in purple because that's the current activity color. And what you'll eventually see is the new cup being built here. And then what happens after the new clinic goes into play is you see two green activities which are highlighting people activities. This is people vacating a building, which you'll see being highlighted over here in building 17. So you'll see that building highlighted in the green and indicating, okay, those people are vacating that building and they're moving into the clinic. The next group that happened was demolishing the buildings 16 and 17 and the associated corridors that attach those exterior corridors, as well as the new clinic being built. Now you can also see again the cost being aggregated here over time. It says 214 million right now. So what it says is the current date. This is February 27th of 2019. This is phase 3, construct new clinic activity, and then the cost associated with it. All right, I'll just pause it again. The phase is phase 3, relocate staff in buildings 1, 4, 12, and 25. So every building that you see highlighted, they're going to renovate those projects, so they're moving those people out. One thing that's very important in a situation like this is to figure out swing space. Where are those people going to move to? Are they moving off campus? Are you bringing in temporary buildings? How does that work? In this phase proposed by Leo A. Daly, that's one of the unidentified activities, but they do propose that perhaps temporary buildings on the campus would be an option. And then the last activity on this schedule is those buildings being renovated.